Buenos días y bienvenidos. Good morning. Welcome once again to Tiempo. I'm Joe Torres. Catholic Latino leaders will gather later this fall to discuss ways to strengthen how they respond to the communities they serve. The event is called Quinto Encuentro, and it's a major event for delegates from all over the country. They'll talk to the nation's bishops and gather in working groups to discuss how the Catholic Church in the United States can better respond to the needs of the Latino faithful. We'll have more on that coming up in just a few minutes. Right now, though, hundreds of undocumented children separated from their families after authorities caught them illegally crossing the border. Many of those children are here in New York City. Now, the law is pretty clear. The government cannot detain migrant children with their parents. That's why authorities separate the families. But when the president put a stop to that practice, well, how was law enforcement going to keep arresting the parents? One of many questions. President Trump also recently said people who enter the United States illegally should be sent back to where they came from without any judicial process. Here's Eyewitness News reporter Josh Einiger.
It's the first time the public has seen the inside of the Cayuga Center, the East Harlem facility contracted by the federal government to care for several hundred kids from the border. MSNBC tonight aired these images and an interview with a terrified, despondent little girl named Jessica.
¿Tienes hambre? ¿Por qué lloras? ¿Quieres hablar con tu papá?
This is what family separation looks like. It's the face of zero tolerance.
I said today, I don't want judges. I want ICE and Border Patrol agents. That's what I want.
The president was unapologetic about his language on Twitter. We cannot allow all of these people to invade our country, he tweeted. When somebody comes in, we must immediately, with no judges or court cases, bring them back from where they came.
It's time this country looked in the mirror. And let's remember who we are and what we are about. But we are not about this.
Governor Cuomo said nearly 1,300 kids had been shipped to New York from the southern border. Some came across without their parents, others ripped away from them in facilities like this tent city in Tornillo, Texas. And even in the face of the zero tolerance policy, the migrants keep coming.
Look, there's a smuggler.
ABC News was near McAllen, Texas, when a smuggler deposited a small group of migrants. Why did this woman cross with an infant in arms, knowing the risks? She said gangs in her native Honduras had threatened to kill her baby. They already killed her father. Josh Einiger, Channel 7, Eyewitness News.
Now, joining us this morning to help clear up some of the complexities of the immigration crisis, two good friends of ours here on Tiempo, attorneys Jose Perez and Cabanillas. Welcome to you both. Man, there's a lot that we can talk about just out of that story right there. Judicial process, the children, how are they going to be reunited? Have you heard any details about reunification for the kids who are here in New York City?
I think the latest is like they've created a hotline, but it seems as if, given there are a multitude of federal agencies involved, the right hand doesn't know what the left hand. The president issues an executive order. Those that are supposedly that will carry out those wishes don't seem to have a clue. There's differing information on almost a daily basis. So you still have parents, say, at the border in Texas or in detention, and you now have kids being shipped, as the footage showed, to New York and many other places.
And sometimes you have young kids who you rely on them to help provide an answer as to where their parents might be, and some of those kids are 4. No, 2. They may not even know the answer to that.
Yeah, there's reports, again, some of the kids have been told, like, to memorize the name and number of a family member or relative here in the States in case they get separated, and so they can provide that information. But it seems this administration is engaging in, I don't know, a lot of political rhetoric and not enough reality of connecting.
Chris, you heard the judicial angle there, that the president doesn't want judges involved in here. You know, maybe people would look at that, and here's where you're the expert, help us out. Is that unconstitutional?
Yeah, there's due process, of course. And if you hear that lady's heart-wrenching story, the reality is that people need asylum, and there are real asylum cases. And unfortunately, you know, this zero tolerance and his rhetoric is trying to eliminate that process completely.
Yeah.
And it's going to have these devastating results.
Well, let me ask you both this question, and I'll start with you. The president wants a strong border. You've heard him say it 1,000 times. Can you have a strong border and not separate children from families caught illegally crossing the border? Can you do both?
Yeah, let me tell you, he's trying to create a situation that's going to deter people from coming.
Yes.
Will it deter those folks who, don't really have asylum cases that are here just trying to get some work? Perhaps, especially if they're going to see them suited up. You're going to have to serve some time for coming in. It may.
Yeah.
Is it going to deter that lady who's coming with her baby, whose father has been killed?
Yeah.
Right? And she's worried that her baby's going to be killed. It's not going to stop her. It's just going to make her life miserable. And
Yeah.
can we really stomach that? Do we want to, as Americans, stomach that reality that we're not here to help anybody else? I don't see how we do it.
So same question. How do you accomplish strong border and not separate those children from their parents?
Well, again, it's how you implement, define priorities and policies, right? So in the past, families would be interviewed. They're entitled to what's called a credible fear interview if they're fleeing from gang violence or other abuses in their native country. They're interviewed, and if determined to be credible, they're released. Why is there a need now to all of a sudden criminally prosecute the parent for crossing the border and seeking relief, asylum? Isn't that what the principles of this country?
How long did those asylum hearings last, and what happened to the people while that decision was yet to be made?
Well, the initial credible fear interview is done at the border by asylum officers. The actual asylum process in immigration court, and Chris probably has a little more experience on this, is the immigration court's a backlog. If you're not in detention, it could take months, if not years. If you're in detention, then there's a fast track to trying to deport you.
It didn't always work this way, right? I mean,
well, look, the process does take a lot because you're dealing with evidence and trying to bring that in. It takes a long time to establish that type of evidence, right? So to give somebody the due process that's required is going to take some time. The Obama administration in 2014 tried to speed that up, and it had devastating consequences. Pro bono lawyers who were trying to help out said they couldn't adjudicate their cases, they couldn't defend their clients, and people were being robbed of the due process. So the problem is this kind of rocket docket. Hasn't worked historically.
Hasn't worked historically. Sit tight. So many more questions to ask when we come back. More on the immigration crisis involving young children. So many of them. Still ahead on Tiempo, Catholic Latino leaders will gather later this fall to discuss ways to strengthen how they respond to the communities they serve. Very interesting when we come back.